Hello and welcome to Sword and Shield after Master Rank calls to Wrath. A lot of this is going to be based around Element and Ailment. However, I do have one that is pointless, and well, I'll show it to you first and I'll explain why it's pointless. So here we are. This is Taroth Slicer Water. The reason I've gone for this is the water is hidden, it's got the highest raw. We could fit an Elementus in there to try and boost it, and we're basically running the current meta-ish set. We're just missing out on one attack deco. That is it. But as you can see, regardless, one, we're missing out on purple. Two, we are slightly behind on the raw, so we are technically, I believe it's 15 EFR below, but even if this was of the same EFR or even remotely higher, it's completely pointless for the simple fact that Shatterfang does blast, so it's going to overtake it eventually at one point, so pointless. But yeah, okay, we've got the riffraff out of the way. Let's move on. So, up next, I have a collection of elemental sword and shields. I have tried and play tested, as well as jiggled around with varying different numbers to get the best possible damage out of these. And it does seem quite clear that apart from a few cases, Coalescence wins, simply because Coalescence affects both your raw and your element. So my main setup for this will be Coalescence. There are a few monsters such as Diablos where you're going to be pretty damn hard pressed to get a Coalescence proc, so obviously we're running peak performance for that. I'm just going to be showing the same weapon because pretty much all of the builds are the same. The only thing that's going to change is their effective raw and their effective element, simply just because they all have crit element, they've all got one deco slot, they all pretty much have the exact same sharpness, they are set up near enough the exact, well, they are set up the exact same way. So you just need to swap out your weapon and your one elemental deco, should you wish to have it, and you're good to go. Now, all of these are still a work in progress. This is just the best I can figure at the moment. I'm not too sure if something like Arch-Tempered Namiel is going to change anything. But yeah, Kjar Slicer, pick your element, with pick your element deco. Kaiser Crown Beta with Phoenix Vitality. Brachydium Male Beta with Phoenix Vitality, critical and an attack. Kaiser Van Braces Beta with an Expert 4, Phoenix Jewel 3. Kaiser Coil Beta with critical vitality, critical attack, and then Brachydium Greaves with attack 4, attack, and we're running a Challenger Charm. If you run in a group, swap out that Phoenix for a Brace, and that shouldn't really affect your damage too much, but overall that is my sort of standard elemental sword and shield, and it does do some pretty good work. It's just I suck with sword and shield. I'm learning though, I'm getting better. Now, for monsters that have a bit of a janky hit zone value with the element in question, such as Namiel, I find at least, I've swapped out the elemental deco for an attack, and then again for something like Diablos, where you're going to be hard pressed to get a Coalescence proc, this is peak performance. As you can see, we do get a pretty decent buff to raw, but the element does drop fairly considerably, and yeah, it still does work. I'm not quite good enough at the math to see if it's worth it over just using Shatterfang, whether Shatterfang just still outperforms them. It still does some pretty good damage, like I said, and you're not doing too bad on clear times. If this friggin' Tio would actually stop running around all over the place and actually stayed in a pretty decent localized area, and if I was slightly better, I think I've got about roughly 7 minutes of actual combat time, but the overall hunt took about 15 minutes because I just ran everywhere, which is really annoying. So they do some pretty decent damage. Now, for my next two builds, these are something that I found to be relatively interesting, and again, some people that are a little bit more all over the math than I am could probably tell you. However, from what I can gather, these next two builds are very much worth it for solo play or for monsters that are stupidly, and I do mean stupidly, weak to blast. So the first one, Cast Slicer Blast. We've got an attack deco in there. Flawless Vitality. You can use Coalescence if you wish to get that little bit more blast out. Flawless Vitality again. Critical Duel 2, Attack Duel, Expert Duel 4, Flawless Duel 2, Critical Vitality, Critical Attack, and Challenger. Basically all the builds are basically saying the same. However, with this one, you might notice that we're at 755 effective raw, which is a roughly 100 effective raw below Shatterfang. But Shatterfang only gets, I think it's 4 or 6 effective status. Yeah, this is at 20.4. Yay. If you use Coalescence, it goes to 24 flat, like no more, just 24, which I think is going to be slightly more worth it over utilising peak performance as long as you can maintain Coalescence. However, my big issue at the moment is, and what I can't quite figure out because I'm not that good at the math, is in solo play, would that level of blast capability outperform the raw of Shatterfang? So far from what I have tested, the answer is yes, but I don't want to concretely put it out there and say this beats Shatterfang until I am 100% certain. It's just something I'm playing around with at the moment. However, there is one more that got me intrigued because Tuna said so. Just messing around with the augments and the custom upgrades nets us 32.8 effective status. This has dropped our raw a little bit more, but it did seem to like it was alluded to the simple fact that because some monsters are just that weak to blast and will take double blast damage, against those monsters, this build, as well as the previous build, do seem to work very, very well. Overall, quite pleased with what I've got so far, so I hope that it does help you guys out and potentially gives you a rough idea of where to go with Elemental Sword and Shield or Ailment Sword and Shield. And if you have any suggestions, do feel free to let me know. Again though, I do wish to reiterate that these are all sort of builds in progress, they're not finalised. Potentially something else could come out or make a change to, or someone might find this weird thing that I'm missing that will just make these builds so much more complete and worthwhile. However though, I do feel this is a good starting point. In the meantime, have fun, good luck, and don't die. It's bad for the health. Also, if you guys wish, it would be absolutely great if you could maybe click that like button, subscribe. It is free and it really does help me out. But yeah, toodles.